Welcome, welcome to the Interfaith session of the 17th North American Zoroastrian Congress. My name is Rohinton Rivetna. Some of you might know me, others may not. Our speaker is Mobedyar Maneck Bhujwala, and we have honored guests from the interfaith world sitting right here in the front row. The format is going to be, I'll give a short introduction. Maneck is going to give a talk, and then there are going to be questions and answers. And our honored guests will possibly answer some of your questions that you may have. Interfaith, as the name implies, is a movement for dialogue between the faiths, interfaith. And formerly, in America, in United States, interfaith meant different denominations of Christianity. It's been perhaps maybe about 15, 20 years or so that it's transformed because the whole world is here in the United States and Canada. So we have people from all over the world, and that's changed the scenario. So interfaith now really means interfaith, where we have Christians, Jews, Muslims, Zoroastrians, of course, Baha'is, and all the denominations, Hindus, and so on. The mission of interfaith is to bring about world peace. And there is a famous theologian who said that, Hans Kuhn, who has said that there shall be no peace on this earth until there is peace among religions, which is a fact. You can see what's happening all around the world. The religion, the basic force is the religion that they're fighting against and between each other. So the model for interfaith comes to us from the 1893 Parliament, the Parliament of the World's Religions that was held in Chicago in 1893. And that model is to dialogue with each other. With dialogue, dialogue brings understanding of each other. And with understanding, it is hoped that there is respect for each other, and with respect, perhaps there is peace in this world. However, we see that that model is not working if you could take into consideration all the things that are happening in this world today. And it's my sense that we ought to tweak that model. We need to look at more intra-faith, because there are just a few of us, we are regulars, and we kind of see each other, and we talk peace between each other, some of us who are regulars, and then when we go back home, nothing happens. So intra-faith is what we want to bring home to our own people, to talk about these matters within our own communities, which we don't do. They are not interested, our communities are not interested in other faiths. They are interested in their own mostly. And that's our shortcoming, I think. Our presenter today is Mobedyar Maneck Bhujwala. Maneck is a man with a calling. He has been instrumental in forming two associations in North America. We have 27 associations, of which he has been instrumental, co-founder of a couple of associations, one in San Francisco, the other one right here. He's an engineer by profession, and when he lived in San Francisco, he served, I think, with the Bay Area Interfaith Network. My good friend Charles serves on it at the Presidio. And then now today, here in Los Angeles, he serves on the board of Greater Huntington Beach Interfaith Council and the South Coast Interfaith Council, of which some of you, honored gentlemen, ladies, are members. He co-chairs the Fizana Interfaith Committee with Shernaz Minwala, one other lady who is in Detroit. I don't think she's here today, but he co-chairs that committee. We have a committee at the national level, Fizana Interfaith Committee. Fizana stands for Federation of Zoroastrian Associations of North America. And we have 27 associations, and we come together in a federation. And he's the chair of the Interfaith Committee. He has trained to be a Mobedyar, which is to be a priest, assistant priest, and he serves the community in priestly capacities in many ways. Now, the life of an interfaither is a lonely one, I can tell you from my own experience, because here's a picture I asked him to make. Here's a picture of Maneck sitting on a bus, and he's the lone representative of the Zoroastrian faith. And a lot of us are just there by ourselves, doing our thing, and we bring in a lot of value, but others do not really get into the interfaith. So we do our thing, and Maneck does his own thing, and that hopefully changes, and Homie knows we are there all the time. Nobody else comes with us, and it's pulling teeth to get people out and so on. So we know these things. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mobedyar Maneck Bhujwala, the men with a calling. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohinton. Before I start my brief speech, I would like to recognize all the people who have been participating in interfaith events or having leadership roles. So let me start with our own community member, Dolly Malwa. Can you please?
Hi, I'm Dolly, and I'm been an ex-president of my Zoroastrian Association, as well as I've been involved in interfaith throughout Los Angeles, and I attend the meetings and all that required.
Right. And then we have Behram Pastakia.
I'm from the metropolitan Washington, D.C. area, and I've been on the Interfaith Council of Metropolitan Washington for 10 years with Zoroastrian representative. And I'm on the steering committee of the 9/11 Unity Walk, which is going to have its 10th anniversary next year, which is a big major interfaith event in the city's capital, the world's nation's capital. Thank you.
And then we have Don Garrick over here.
I'm Don Garrick. I serve on the board with Maneck Bhujwala at the Equator Huntington Beach Interfaith Council, where he has served diligently and is very well respected and liked for quite a few years. And also, he's attended the Orange County Interfaith Network as president of our council for 2 years in a row. Called him back like special command. And so I'm LDS, Director of Public Affairs and for a group of congregations in Orange County. And on the Orange County Interfaith Network, which Tom Thorkelson is, and maybe I'll segue to him because they're both LDS. And this is Bishop Tom Thorkelson, former bishop, who is the legendary interfaith leader. And he's also a leader in the Orange County Interfaith Network of 11 interfaith councils. Tom?
He's introduced me, thank you.
Take a bow.
He's introduced me, thank you.
Yeah, pass it on. Yeah. And there's Father Alexei from the Archdiocese of Los Angeles.
Thank you. I'm the Ecumenical and Interreligious Officer for the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Los Angeles here. This is the largest Catholic archdiocese in the United States, and I've been privileged to serve as the Ecumenical Officer, which means that I direct the Catholic Church's relations with all other religions. I like to say from A to Z, from the Armenian Orthodox to the Zoroastrians. Finally, I have an opportunity to be with the Zoroastrians, so thank you for inviting me today.
And we have Kay Lindahl she is member of several organizations in Southern California, but she's also a member or board member of the North American Interfaith Network, which I just joined earlier this year, at an election in Detroit. They had a conference over there. So, Kay.
Thank you. I live in Orange, I don't live in Orange County anymore. I live in Long Beach, and I'm a member of the Episcopal Church, and I serve on the Episcopal Church's Diocesan Interreligious and Ecumenical Affairs Committee. I am an ex-board member at American Interfaith Network, and I got inoculated, I think maybe the virus of interfaith in 1991. So I've been doing this work for a long time, and I've been to all 4 of the modern parliaments of the world religions, and I'm an ambassador for the parliament. I served as a global council trustee for the United Religions Initiative, and I founded a couple of local organizations as well. So I'm delighted to be here with Zoroastrians. I was telling Rohinton, I met him in 1993 in Chicago, I think, at that parliament in 1993, and then subsequently with the United Religions Initiative. So he was the first Zoroastrian I ever met in person. So he's got that distinction.
Give it to Jim. And thank you. And Jim Barrett is from the Baha'i group.
Yeah, I'm a fairly new Baha'i, a couple years up into the Baha'i faith, Catholic Church and all my life for it. Glad to be with them. And I started the same thing. I came across the South Coast Interfaith Council and just been going to program after program. I'm currently going to a program that will continue this end of January on Sufi mysticism. And it's exciting.
And I think next video. This is Mr. Homi Gandhi. He is also he's the vice president of the Federation of Zoroastrian Associations of North America, and he is the one who called me up several months ago to say, we would like to have you get involved in our federation activities, and represent us on the North American Interfaith Network Board of Directors. And so that's how I kind of he convinced me to get into it. So, Homi.
Thank you. My name is Homi Gandhi. I represent Fazana on the Interfaith Activities Committee as a co-chair with Rohinton for the last so many years. Have been involved as a treasurer for Religions for Peace USA and the Religions for Peace International on the World Assembly as an honorary president. Kay, I don't know whether you remember, but you were the one who asked me to come on the investment committee a long time ago of names. And you needed some help, and I think we managed that. And ever since that I've been involved, and I was called upon to be a director of NAIM. Since I've been involved in many other things, I couldn't think about any other better person than Maneck Bhujwala to be nominated, and so we nominated Maneck from Fazana. New committee, new co-chairs, Maneck and Shahnaz Minwala are there, so I'm just acting as an advisor to Fazana Interfaith Activities Committee. Thank you.
Mr. Ibrahim from the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. I was just invited to their congress or conference just a couple of days ago, which I went over, and boy, they had a huge crowd, over there, and they were very, very hospitable, and I was very surprised to know how much, very enlightened beliefs they have, and they are the community that is heavily persecuted by the rest of the Muslims, many of them temples or mosques have been destroyed and many people killed and all that kind of thing. One time I had invited one of his colleagues to our Greater Huntington Beach Interfaith Council meeting, and he had talked about it, one of them. But anyway, Mr. Ibrahim.
Well, thank you. I'm very pleased to be here, and so good to see you, Maneck. Yes, we're honored by your presence. Father, also, I see we have the interfaith group here. A number of us are very involved with each other in terms of sharing our faith and participating with one another. And I think that's a very beautiful thing, because one source, one people, one God,
is Dorota, and she participates in, many interfaith type meetings. She goes to a lot of the Baha'i meetings also, but she is a great admirer of the Zoroastrian religion, she just kind of, find words sometimes to be how impressed she is with our religion. And, a lot of times I communicate with her. And I think one time you visited the California Zoroastrian Center, right? So.
Oh dear. Well, I just want to say that I didn't think there were any Zoroastrians in the world. I thought it was a faith that happened thousands of years ago and did not continue. And by man upstairs, I managed to find out that there was a center in Westminster, and twisted the arm of a friend of mine because I don't drive to take them down. And when I went there, I could not believe that this was alive and existing, and in all the different faiths I have been, when they talked about prophets, that they could possibly leave out one name, which was Zarathushti. And they did not discuss the Zoroastrian religion as existing, alive and well. And that's why I'm here. I approached Maneck and I said I asked somebody, who I could talk to because I knew about the Interfaith group up where I am in San Pedro in the harbor area, and said, I'm here to help you. I want to introduce you to our group because I can't believe that we are not discussing this great faith. I cannot tell you how much I love everybody in this room, how glad I am to be here, how wonderful it is to have met Maneck and to be part of this even for 1 second. Please keep this faith alive and well. Please let other people know that you're here, that there are good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Nothing has moved me as much in my whole life. I've studied every religion. I've practiced every religion. And there is nothing like my little 36-page book of the Gathas that I've ever read. Thank you.
And can you please, people in the back, if you can move forward, because that way you will hear me better. They are going to turn down the volume a little bit because they were having some problem in the other room. So if you can come closer by, I appreciate. And the next person I would like to mention is Mr. Firdosh Mehta. Firdosh Mehta, he's one of our veteran people in the Zoroastrian group, and he has been involved in Interfaith for a long time also.
Thank you, Maneck. If you wouldn't mind me taking a couple of minutes of your time, I could perhaps share some interesting things about Interfaith that I've had the joy to know in my life. I'm from the north of the 43rd parallel, so as a Canadian, I'm foreign over here, but I'm not foreign to Interfaith because it is everywhere, in all countries and all cities. And I was in Dallas, Texas for 5 years as a transferee from my employer. And I participated in Interfaith in Dallas also. We started off as being a council for the Human Rights Commission of Alberta for faith-based disputes in employment. And of course, there were many times I was called to come and give some understanding to the Council of the Faith, only to find out that it was not my faith. Some other faith was there, but I was able to give them the understanding, so I soon became very much of a common figure that they would call. And then we decided to formalize it, and we registered as a nonprofit, what you call the 501c3 group over there, as a Interfaith Center for Education and Action. And I've represented them in Spain, Barcelona, England, and other places around the world through the peace conferences, etc. One other interesting thing that happened to me was Father Barringer, who was the Dean of the St. Joseph's College at the University of Alberta. I'm sorry if I'm backing you folks. Once asked me, Firdosh, what is wrong with you guys? You are the oldest faith, you are the mother of all religions, and you guys are dying out. I didn't know it was like a compliment in one way. So I said, don't worry, Father Berenger. The mother has to grow someday to become a grandmother. And a grandmother, a great-grandmother. And she leaves all her children behind to continue her work, and you are all her children. Thank you.
You can give it to Ketayan. Ketayan Kapadia, right here. This is the president of our Federation of Zoroastrian Association of North America, so I wanted to recognize her.
Thank you.
And her support for Interfaith.
Thank you, Maneck, and thanks to all of the other faiths who are present here in this room with us today. It is very heartening to see all of you here, and Maneck, Homi, Rohinton are all doing a great job to promote what we need to do in North America to create an awareness of the Zoroastrian faith. As everybody has said, some people think that it's no longer there, but if you can see all the things going around in this hotel in the past few days, you will see that there is a lot of enthusiasm, particularly in the amongst the youth, to find their roots, to follow the religion, to get active in various avenues that we offer. We also have 26 associations in North America, 20 in the US and 5 in Canada, and they're all Zoroastrian associations. I think if Roshan here, she could tell you about how many, Roshan, how many Zarathustris are there in North America according to your demographics? So we are very much alive and kicking, and thank you again, and let's go ahead.
I don't understand the format of the meeting. I'm happy to share some thoughts, if this is a good time to do it.
We have a very short time, so I was just kind of going to recognize people quickly. But if you can do a quick one.
So I wanted to just elaborate on what Rohinton said, that Interfaith is there for the purpose of dialogue, which deepens understanding. But that is not enough. And I would submit that all of us who are in this room consider creating action programs which lead to social justice, and look for common denominators which bind all our faiths together. And there are many such things, but the one which stands out, which nobody disputes, is service. And we can all come together in the service of humanity. And I would make a proposal to be considered in this meeting, which we can do at a local level or at any other level, that every year we pick 1 week and call it a day of service or a week of service. And I would suggest 2 ends of this bookcase, let us say. 21st of September is the International Day of Prayer for Peace. And 2nd of October is the International Day of Nonviolence. And I would submit that every faith tradition in North America consider participating in an act of service, either within their own community intrafaith, or make it bigger interfaith. And let the people at the grassroots be empowered to choose whatever service project they want to belong to or execute.
Good.
And they could make their photographs and put it on a website, and we can learn from each other and share best practices. So I hope those in this room will consider that proposal. Thank you.
And then we have Mr. Sam Vesuna. He's been also active in Interfaith. So.
I'm on the Interfaith because I live in Toronto, on the board of the Interfaith Ontario Multi-Faith Council, and also on the executive as treasurer. And the reason that I'm there for a treasurer is because they lost funding from the Ontario government of $500,000 because there's a big deficit there. And, but we're carrying on, okay. And I'm also on the board of the Toronto Area Interfaith Council. There we have to thank our Catholic, the Archdiocese of Toronto gives us office space and meeting rooms and things and services. And Father Damien McPherson is the ecumenical representative. And we do our little bit, you know, both. We keep in touch with the Ontario government, like we do religious accommodation in schools, which is a project which is funded by the Ministry of Education in Ontario. We do multi-faith certification of chaplains. The grant we used to get was to supervise chaplains in correctional institutions, but now they said we can't afford it, let each faith group provide the funds, okay. And we do other little things. We produce a manual, interfaith manual, and that's one of the ways that we also have some funding for ourselves. And it's our president in the Ontario Multi-Faith Council is Pandit Rup Sharma. The previous council was Imam Abdul Hai Patel. We have representation from on the executive from the Pentecostal Church and from the Dutch Reformed Church, but the board is comprised of 30 faith groups. And the same applies in the Toronto area Interfaith. Anybody can become even a member. They don't have to represent a faith group, okay? So it's a little more open. And we address any injustices wherever in the world it happens and communicate to the authorities there and to the authorities in Canada. And in Canada, we have now, the Harper government has appointed Ambassador Bennett for interfaith activities, what's happening outside Canada. And so interfaith is a big thing also in Canada. And as Zoroastrians, nobody knows us, so we feel it important to be there. You know. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Well, there's one more person I know is involved in interfaith, is Arman Aryan, right?
Thank you, Maneck. I've been a member of Upland Interfaith Council for about 11 years, representing Zoroastrians. And I think I saw something on television once that some researchers were saying that in the future, the families, especially in North America, will have multi-religious beliefs and traditions. So, as an example, there will be many, what do they call it, Jewish, Buddhist, or Zoroastrian, something added to it. I believe that interfaith can be very instrumental and helpful to the society if we work together sincerely, meaning that we have mutual respect for each other, and also that we share with our children and community about other traditions. For instance, this year, by the way, I don't know how many of you know this, but the stamp this year for Christmas had 3 Zoroastrians on it, the 3 Magi's. There are only 7, I believe 6 or 7 Gentiles in the Bible, and all of them are Zoroastrians. And it's hard to believe that so many people have not heard the name of them. Cyrus, Xerxes, Darius, and the 3 Magi's, and also I believe Artaxerxes. So we have contributed so much. Cyrus being in Isaiah 45 named the Anointed, and Darius, and so many contributions that Zoroastrians have made, and unfortunately it's unknown. Thank you, Maneck.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. And if I have missed someone, please forgive me. But we have only 15 minutes left, so I'm going to try to speak up my purport. Well, welcome again, everybody. I just wanted to, basically, the idea of the meeting was to try to motivate some people from our Zoroastrian community to participate, as Rohinton pointed out. That's our big task, to go to our own communities to participate in interfaith events. So here is what I had. What is interfaith tolerance? What is interfaith dialogue? What is interfaith harmony? Interfaith tolerance, in very simple words, is the acceptance of the rights of people to practice their chosen religion. Interfaith dialogue is civilized communication between followers of different religions, involving an exchange of information about each other's religious beliefs and customs. and interfaith harmony is the ultimate goal of interfaith dialogue. Now, why do we need to think about interfaith harmony? Now, there are many reasons. Some people have had the experience of being discriminated in jobs, society, public life, etc. I was just talking to one of our people attending here. When he went to Canada, he was, when he applied for a job, he was openly told, well, we don't hire any Pakistanis or Indians or, things like that. So that was a kind of quite a shock for him. And the other things other people have experienced insulting comments, like, why don't you go home where you came from? Still others have had their property vandalized or physical violence committed on their person, sometimes resulting in death, As you know, after 9/11, many people were, targeted. One Hindu guy was pushed off the tracks of a subway, and he got killed. There were some Sikh people, with the people who wear turbans. They are not Muslims, and they got targeted, and some people have been killed because of that. And so these kind of things happen. And of course, on the world stage, we have horrible atrocities committed in the name of God and religion, just because one belonged to a different religion, right? I mean, it has happened in history in the past. You have, in the Christian ancient history, you have the Church of Rome, going and fighting and killing many other Christians who did not follow the doctrine of the Roman Church. And, we have, in the Muslim faith, we know how the Shia and Sunnis, they kill each other just because they follow a different version of their religion. And of course, our friend who has come here today, from the Ahmadiyya sect, all those people gang up against them, and they persecute them, kill them, what have you. So these things are happening. So that's why we need to think about interfaith harmony. Now, what are some examples of religious tolerance in history, the positive thing? Now, the first example that comes to me, maybe a little bit prejudiced, but Cyrus the Great, who was the king of the Persian Empire, who established the very first Persian Empire in history in sometime around 539 BC or something. And according to Wikipedia, now I'm quoting from Wikipedia, Zoroastrianism has long encouraged interfaith all the way from Cyrus the Great's speech in Babylon, which permitted the population to keep following their own religion and keep speaking their own language. He even bowed to the gods of the Babylonians. And Cyrus did not enforce state religion unto the people. Cyrus freed all the Jewish slaves from Babylon, which earned him a place in the Jewish scriptures. If you go in the Old Testament, he is the only non-Jewish person mentioned as the anointed one, as the savior of the Jews, etc. Zoroastrians believe that all religions are basically equal, and that their religion is not superior to other religions. Because we believe that all religions are coming from the same source. We all say that there is one God, and so he just gives his inspiration to people in different parts of the world. And of course, people, prophets and messengers, they speak in their own different language, and they have to follow some of the customs of their traditions. And so that's why we have differences, but the ethical message is practically the same. Then another example is Saint Francis of Assisi. He was from like 1181 to 1226 of the Common Era. He was a Catholic priest, a peacemaker, who even went and talked to the Sultan, during the Crusades that were going on. He was trying to make peace between the two religions. A third example is Mughal Emperor Akbar the Great, who lived from 1542 to 1605 of the Common Era. He was a Mughal emperor of North India. The formal, and basically he, was trying to, he even created a syncretic religion made up of Zoroastrianism, Christianity, and Islam. Okay, he called it Deen-e-Ilahi. Of course, the clerics did not go for it, but he was very, very tolerant of other religions. Okay, the formal worldwide interfaith movement started with the first Parliament of World Religions that was held in Chicago in 1893. Now, Swami Vivekananda of India, who many of you may know about, who mesmerized the audience, said, quotes, "If the Parliament of Religion has shown anything to the world, it is this, it has proved to the world that holiness, purity, and charity are not the exclusive possessions of any church in the world, and that every system has produced men and women of the most exalted character. In the face of this evidence, if anybody dreams of the exclusive survival of his own religion and destruction of others, I pity him from the bottom of my heart and point out to him that upon the banner of every religion will soon be written, in spite of resistance, quote, help and not fight, assimilation and not destruction, harmony and peace and not dissension. A Zoroastrian priest, Dastur Jamasji Minocherji Jamas Pasa, was a member of the working committee for that first World Parliament of Religions in 1893. And then there was Sir Jivanji Jamshedji Modi, a priest, scholar, public servant, and community activist who was a Zoroastrian representative at that first World Parliament. So we had some Zoroastrian representation even in the very first Parliament, where he presented a paper titled Belief and Ceremonies of the Followers of Zoroaster, in which he quoted extensively from Western scholars and presented Zoroastrianism as generative of civilization and progress. While religions have been a civilizing force on human beings, we also see a history of discrimination, harassment, violence, genocide, and forced conversions perpetrated in the name of religion. One of the big reasons for mistrust between religions, religious communities, is ignorance about the beliefs of other religions and false stereotypes created by people in the past. Leaders have used such ignorance, stereotypes, and fear of other religions to incite and justify discrimination and violence against religious minorities. I was taking one course at Claremont University online, and this was about how the Orientalists, the scholars of the Western world, they used to portray their observation of the Eastern world, the Middle East and Asia and all that, in their own stereotype way, and which then got absorbed by the public in the Western world. They're okay, well, if you go to India, you see these cows running around and snakes, and things like that, and all kinds of other stereotypes. So it's nothing unusual. Today we see growing tensions, religious discrimination, violence, genocide, and forced conversions happening in some of the Middle Eastern and African countries. About ISIS, what they are doing, and what Boko Haram is doing in Africa. And this is not new for our Zoroastrian community, because Zoroastrian used to be the majority population of the Persian Empire. But when the Arabs invaded the Persian Empire, they basically were following the similar practice, of genocide, taking women and children as slaves, and forcing people to convert to Islam, that kind of thing. So these things have happened in the past in many religious communities. There is a possibility that religious extremists might today get their hands on nuclear weapons. You know how there are the intelligence services in Pakistan and some of the military people, they have some sympathies with the extremists, and they have a huge stockpile of nuclear weapons. So, another danger to be aware of. It is therefore important to facilitate and have a dialogue between members of different religious communities so that there is an exchange of information about each other's religious beliefs and realization that there is much we share in common, especially in the ethical teachings of the founders. As we learn from interfaith dialogues about each other, there is a gradual reduction in the mutual fear and distrust that existed previously. Interfaith organizations can play a crucial role in facilitating interfaith dialogues and lectures by religious authorities that are open to the public. By joining interfaith organizations, we can build coalitions of good people from all faiths who will stand by us when we face religious intolerance against our family or community. So, if there is an instance of discrimination or violence or vandalism, against, say, the Mormon community, the LDS church people, or the Jewish community, or the Baha'i community, or, a Muslim community, then we can all stand together and, take action and contact our councilmen, representatives, etc., to make sure that these kind of things do not continue, and the perpetrators are brought to justice. How can someone find out about a local Okay, one more thing. There is sometimes a fear of interfaith dialogue. Joining interfaith organizations or even attending organization meetings. People think that if we go to an interfaith organization or meeting, they will be people will try to convert them to that particular, some different religion. So that's another thing. So while there can be instances of proselytizing on an individual basis, occasionally that can happen, But most of the interfaith organizations have a written rule against proselytizing. Like in our Interfaith Council in Huntington Beach, we have a written rule about that. I'm sure others also have the same. How can someone find out about a local interfaith organization? Because, most people are not that familiar. They may not be reading the news all constantly. So my suggestion is that on the internet, there is a wealth of information that can be accessed via computer search using just a simple keyword like interfaith organization. And with the name of the city where you are living, so then, you'll get some answers, responses from that. The Federation of Zoroastrian Association of North America, FEZANA in short, has an interfaith committee that can help to find an interfaith organization in your local area. So if you are interested, if you contact us, we can be also very helpful to find out. An added benefit for a relatively unknown religion like ours is the opportunity to establish our presence in our communities, in our states, our nation, and throughout the world. So when we participate in interfaith events, people come to know what is the Zoroastrian, who was Zoroaster, Zarathustra, and so that for small community like ours, it's a great advantage. And also similarly for many other smaller religious communities, so. Okay, most people have not heard of Zarathustra or Zoroaster, and some of those who have think that there are no more followers of that prophet. I've heard that kind of comments, I didn't know that there are any more Zoroastrians existing now, So participating in interfaith events and organizations is one way of educating the public about us. Brothers and sisters, I urge you to attend interfaith events in your local areas, develop relations with people of other religions, and join interfaith councils. I have copies of some useful interfaith websites that you are welcome to take with you. I have a bunch of copies I made of websites that, you pick up a copy of that and, see if you can contact anyone that might be close by to you. But otherwise, just search on the internet. So thank you for listening to me. And I'll turn over to our moderator.
We have a few minutes for questions and answers, but what I may do is we'll kind of do the honors first, and then we have questions and answers, and then we have a break. So those of us who want to stay on can stay on and talk. So, right, yeah. And I failed to mention that Mobedyar is working towards a degree in interfaith. So that shows his level of commitment. So, thank you very much. This is a small token of our appreciation.
Thank you, Rohinton.
So those of you who may, yes, and we'll let the panel answer the questions.
Sure. Instead of a question. My name is Jasmine, and I work at Princeton University, liberal college, and in human resources. The point I'm trying to make is with diversity and inclusion now being so high on our list of things to do, of encouraging employees to think in a diverse fashion, the other thing that keeps coming up is subconscious bias. And I urge every one of you who are so involved in interfaith to try and read up on subconscious bias, because every human being has biases. No one can say, I am bias-free. But just learning how to cope with that bias, I think will help just about everyone in becoming a better person, so that we could take it out to the world.
Good
That's
point.
my only comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Hoshi Thamboli. I'm from Tampa, Florida. I have a comment for our guests here. that it is very well that there are local organizations at a local level all over the country and I assume all over the world. Every few decades throughout the history of civilization, there is intolerance that comes to an extreme degree. In the 1930s and 40s, we know what happened when Hitler was around. And there is always simmering intolerance all over the world. It takes the form of violence. But in the last few years, we have evil that's raising its head in a major way in certain parts of the world. And there is institutionalized violence and killing going on in the name of religion. My question is that is there a movement or is there a philosophy within the interfaith community of having the heads or the so-called leaders of different faiths coming together and expressing in very strong words condemnation of what's going on? I think this is very relevant in today's day and age, where there may be a certain section of a religion or a community that is just going totally berserk and causing violence and just some very hateful things that are mindful of things that have happened in the past. You know, Parsis were the first community, Zoroastrians were the first community that went through organized genocide over centuries. We know all that. And therefore, when we see the plight of Yazidis, we see the plight of some other faiths, it strikes us. It is very, of all the communities around, we've gone through all this. And we all know that. So my question is there an international sort of flavored, I'm sure that everybody's concerned, all, including followers of Islam, the majority, the moderate majority, but for some reason they are silent. And this is what, when are we all going to start speaking about this? And this has to get onto an international level.
Actually, if I may, I think it is on an international level now. I know, speaking as a Catholic, I know that Pope Francis has invited other leaders of mostly Christian denominations and Jewish organizations and Muslim organizations to join him in condemning the violence of which you speak and the horror that religious minorities are experiencing now in other parts of the world. Recently, Cardinal Toran, the prefect for the Pontifical Council for Promoting Interreligious Dialogue, asked us on a local level to ask our Muslim friends, in particular here, to issue statements condemning this. I didn't have to do that here in Los Angeles because all of the major Muslim organizations in Los Angeles had already condemned as un-Islamic the things that ISIS is doing. So I know where you're coming from, and when you say that you don't hear Muslim leaders condemning this. I don't know why people don't hear them. My office is flooded with statements from every major Islamic organization here in Southern California, but I will admit to you that the media doesn't seem to pick that up. Those denunciations are there, even on an international level. Those denunciations are there. The chief imam of Turkey recently condemned all of this, but there doesn't seem to be a resonance in the news media for picking that up. And then it's incumbent upon all of us, and I would include the Zoroastrians in this, to join us, join all of these interfaith organizations in absolutely condemning any type of persecution of any religious minority anywhere.
Any UN actions movement?
That I don't know. I may add a comment. Condemnation is not enough, in my view. I think there needs to be positive action from a community to curb this violence, and that is absent. And that's what we may engage as interfaithers, to compel them to take some action, positive action. Condemnation has very little teeth. That's my take.
I think I would like to just compliment that by saying that, you know, like when Russia is taking over the Ukraine, okay, we impose sanctions on them, okay? These are the real actions that can make some difference. And we know that Saudi Arabia and Kuwait As a matter of fact, at the Chino Mosque, they had a poster which said that they know that Saudi Arabia and Kuwait are the ones who have been financing ISIS, So why aren't we able to impose sanctions on those countries, right? Is it because we have this close connection for the oil business? So that's, I think, what Rohinton is probably referring to.
Religions for Peace International, which is one of the body, interfaith organizations which is in existence, which came up in the Cold War time in 60s, at the end of 60s, and it's been in existence for almost over 50 years now. They have various branches and regional associations, and on that, the presidents, the moderators, co-moderators are Islamic, Christians, Jewish, and the local associations, which is in Africa and Middle East. And immediately after that, immediately after any of these events are taking place in Syria, in Pakistan, they have been issuing the statements. Statements are not enough, as he says very rightly, Rohinton. But the actions are necessary, and the actions come from the political will of the nation states. Actions cannot be just imposed by the interfaith organization. One such actions which has taken place is when the people, nation states come together at the United Nations. And once again, the United Nations do not have an authority, or it just appeals to the nation states to put the actions. And the actions which have taken place right now against Russia is the embargo which is taking place. But it has not taken place against other states.
Sam has a comment. Sam.
ISIS, the Council of Imams in Ontario got together and issued a statement. And the Council of Imams have both the Sunni and the Shia representation. So for the first time, in a very strong way, they have condemned what is happening there. And you are right that, the sanctions, because when Ambassador Bennett was hosted at the University of Toronto Interfaith Center, this question was brought up by one of the professors, and they said, there is always this conflict of interest, the national interest, and you wouldn't attack Saudi Arabia for some of the things that happens there because you have a business reason not to do so, okay? And he said, no, you may be right to a point, but we do address it. And he says he has had very strong conversations with the Saudi ambassador to Canada. So it is happening.
Oh.
The other thing that I would speak of is when the lady brought this bias thing. There is one thing, and I faced that myself, and I was given an explanation by my colleague in London, the Russian colleague. I said, for us, sometimes it's very difficult through the repression we went through in Iran not to feel biased towards Islam or Islamic people, And he says, no, don't do that. Don't carry that baggage into interfaith. Because in the history, every one of us has done something, okay? And so you have to get rid of that baggage when you go into interfaith. And then you will be able to perform. And I agree with you that, but the people should be speaking up to their governments and the politicians, and you have this wonderful thing, like why can you have sanctions against Ukraine and not against these countries? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry to say we have to close, but Ketan, a very quick point.
We as Fazana, we did write a letter to President Obama for this ISIS crisis and also to the United Nations. And Fazana did receive a response from the White House, which is posted on our website. I just want to read one sentence from that. All people, no matter which faith they follow, must be confident that they can live safely in their country and advance their interests and aspirations through the political process rather than through violence. Again, thank you for sharing your thoughts. America cannot and should not intervene every time there's a crisis in the world, but our leadership is necessary to underwrite the global security and prosperity upon which our children and grandchildren will depend. And we must do whatever is necessary to protect the security of the United States and the safety of our people. This is just a couple of sentences. There were others also, but we did get a response, and it's on our website. So Fazana, as an organization, did reach out to the political head of the country, and we hope some resolution will come from that.
Thank you, Gitayan. Thank you, everybody, for your indulgence.